ziua, doamnelor și domnilor! Bine ați venit la episodul 4 de Prepare for Future. De data asta o să vorbim în limba engleză, pentru că avem un om foarte important, un om foarte ciotchi, care a venit la noi în cadrul conferinței Web 3.0 în Moldova. Este vorba de Michael Littig și cu el o să vorbim în engleză, așa că, full disclosure, limba engleză astăzi este tema principală. Michael, very glad you could find time to be here with us today and also to come to Moldova and teach us what is Web3 and where it's going and how everyone, including artists, can take care of it. Let me do a brief introduction of you, if you don't mind. So Michael is a creative who works at the intersection of Web3 plus arts to create spaces of belonging. He's the co-founder of the Zuckerberg Institute and a Tony Award-winning co-producer on Broadway. That's pretty nice. He was an angel investor in Clubhouse and held adjunct professor positions at one of the best universities in the US, the New York University. Welcome to Prepare for Future. That's what you do for a living, basically, right?
Yeah.
You prepare for the future.
Yeah.
Let's do a brief explanation of what Web3 is and how it can contribute to the development of arts and artists in general.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think when you think about Web3, you need to think about Web 1 and Web 2 and Web 3. So I'll just walk through that evolution and then I'll talk about artists. So Web 1 is like the information economy. So this is the first time, if you're a listener, that you got to go to a website. You could just read information. You couldn't interact. You couldn't buy anything. It was literally just a website. And then Web 2 came along, which is really what I would say the platform economy, which is social media. And so that's like, think of Twitter, think of Google, think of YouTube, think of Facebook, think of Instagram, think of e-commerce websites, think of Google reviews. Like suddenly now I could interact with people around the world. I could connect, and I could also do that through a centralized system. So this was only through these certain websites, right? So
they facilitate communication.
Exactly, yeah. And so Web3 is this movement toward decentralization. So, right, we were in a centralized place, and we're moving toward this decentralized place because of the blockchain. And this is what I would call the ownership economy, because now you can have records of ownership that are validated on a decentralized network, right? So that means it can't be tampered with.
Poor guys that leave bad comments on Facebook.
Exactly. Everything's transparent, right? And so it's opening up a new type of internet, which is this idea, and if we go back to creators and artists, that you have an opportunity to go more directly to your audience. So, for example, I work with an artist that launched an album on Spotify, and for them to make any type of money off of that, they need to have about 1 million listens on Spotify, which is pretty astronomical.
It's more than your relatives.
Yeah, exactly. And so what ends up happening is like a lot of these platforms, and rightly so, because it's part of their business model, they take like 8% or 12% of each sale. But with Web3...
And that's if you're the original creator, right? Because if you're remixing or something, you're not even allowed to get any revenue from that.
Correct. It depends on what you're remixing, yeah. Because there's a lot of like... kind of like how you navigate those laws and everything. But when it comes down to Web3 is that you're now removing that intermediary, so you can go more directly to your audience and connect with them and actually co-own with them. So you see a lot of artists starting to think of like a musician, a band releases an album as what's called an NFT. We can talk about that later, what that means. And now their fans actually co-own distribution and profits within that.
So let's say Eminem releases a new album.
Yeah.
NFTs are expensive. Mm-hmm. If he has 50 million fans around the world, how would they each kind of own a part of that album? How would that happen?
Well,
or does it happen only with smaller artists?
Yeah, it depends. So I think, have you ever heard of the band Kings of Leon?
Yeah,
they're pretty
Everyone
big.
knows that famous song.
Yeah, they're a pretty big band. So they released an NFT as an album and did really well. They sold out the NFT. And so right now in the space, you see a different strategy. I think people are moving away from the word NFT, and I think we will, as a society, not use that word anymore. if you look at Starbucks, for instance, last week launched a Web3 campaign, an NFT, but they never used the word NFT. They said it was a journey stamp and it was points.
So let's explain to the people who don't know, what is an NFT and why did it become so scary?
Scary. Well, that's a great question. So, okay, NFT, non-fungible token. I always say, okay, I'll just, what's the difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token? Well, let's say fungible is like it can be
reproduced.
Yes, money. Mm-hmm. Money is fungible. I could just print more of it, right? Something that's non-fungible is Alex. You're non-fungible.
Hopefully.
There's only one.
Until we get to
I hope
clone.
so. Yeah. And then your dog, one dog, right? Non-fungible. That means there's only one of those. Now, if you add the word token, think of token as just it's a record, right? It's a number that's validated.
So like in my case, my wife is married to me. She owns a token that I belong to her.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Co-ownership,
yep.
Right? So that's a non-fungible token. Now, basically, that token can point to anything, media, right? So it can point to a video, a song, a picture, a record of a marriage, can be a non-fungible token. So why is it scary? Great question. So, I think it's scary because it opens up a whole new world of record, right? In the past, when how do I validate that Formula One hat is actually the brand? Mm-hmm. How do I validate that that's actually McLaren? Like if McLaren made that, for instance, how do I validate that this Coach bag is this? How do I validate that this piece of art is actually this piece of art? It's not a reproduction.
You have either prints or stamps on it,
exactly.
Or you buy it from the official store.
Exactly, yeah. Right? And even those can be, made up. Like they can be, forged. Mm-hmm. And so there's this interesting thing that, art is based on scarcity. I want to have that hat because not that many people have it, or it feels cool, right? Or it feels like it validates that this is the true ownership of that. That is an original. And so you're seeing this play out, and we're in a very early phase where people are experimenting with what they can co-own. And so when people start to experiment, it's like the Wild Wild West. So that's why it feels a little scary, because there's, we don't know what we're doing.
So basically the NFTs, which are part of Web3, is it a for sure direction where the internet is going, or is it a possible direction into which it's going?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a merge of both, right? So currently we're in what I would call Web 2.3. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is not everything is decentralized. And it's actually very important to have central banks.
As of right now, yeah.
Yeah. We're experimenting what it means to decentralize governance, but it doesn't work all the time, right? There are things that, if we look at societies and way back in culture, there are reasons why centralization is really powerful and why it really works. So what I think we'll see is a merge of these two worlds, and you'll see certain industries kind of push towards what I would call a Web3 model, and you'll see certain industries really stay within that centralized
Let
Web2.
me take a guess.
Yeah.
Facebook, Spotify will not want decentralization.
Well, Meta is, I can't speak for Meta, but I can see that they will have to pivot.
You think so?
Yeah, all companies, I think, you're going to see, I'll give you an example, right? So think of the iPhone, and remember the BlackBerry?
Mm-hmm. I love that phone.
Well, I remember when everyone had the BlackBerry, I was so jealous because I was like, I want to have the typing thing, right? Mm-hmm. So back when mobile came on board and BlackBerry was I would say BlackBerry was the number one phone, right?
It was the coolest phone.
Yeah, it was awesome. So what ended up happening is they said, no one's going to want to surf the internet on our phone. This is just not going to happen. iPhone came out, they said, nope, everyone's going to use internet for mobile. And it changed the whole kind of game overnight in terms of mobile stuff. What ended up happening is BlackBerry just stuck with its guns. BlackBerry didn't pivot. BlackBerry no longer. No one has a BlackBerry anymore. So what I'm constantly learning is when these technologies come up, you just have to go, okay, how does that apply to me?
But at the same time, it happened because a giant company like Apple was the one that initiated this pivot.
Very true.
In the case of Web3, it's more the bottom layers, us, the regular people that want to get this to spread, to happen.
Yeah.
Which means we can get stopped by the billions of dollars that might be invested into lobbying, into stopping this, right?
Sure. Or what I'm seeing is the brands are coming and they're building quietly, very quietly. And
like a little R&D project.
I know they're like quietly, and because I've talked to them, and they work on these things, they're quietly coming, and they will come. And that's what happens, right? It always, with these kind of technologies, there's an openness to experience. So you have a bunch of people that are like, I want to like figure this out. You have a bunch of experimentation. Then the brands come in with billions of dollars, and then they shift the way they do that. Now, regulation is going to happen. Actually, regulation is needed in these kind of things. It's lawless.
The Wild West needed sheriffs.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, this is that's why we have to say we're really early in this moment, and that over time you'll see it merge. Much like, think about when you first had a Facebook. Do you remember when you first?
2007.
Yes, 2007. Yes. Okay, so mine was 2006. And it was a little clunky, and do you remember?
Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah. Do you remember on Facebook they had games? Like you could do games.
Yes.
That went away.
What was it?
It was like a farm game. Farmville.
Yeah.
So, that was a business model that they were trying out. Didn't work.
That's kind of Web3 though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they use the same types of models as engagement. Now with Web3, there's different because it's there's a play to earn model, which we could talk about, which is like
I actually met one of my acquaintances. We were going to this running race, and he's like, Alex, what kind of games do you play? And I'm like, okay, I'll bite.
Yeah.
I just play games that I like shooters and whatnot.
Yeah.
And what about you? I play games where I get paid to play them. To play them. So he started telling me about this, and I'm like, I'm definitely playing the wrong games.
Yeah. Well,
because it sounds exciting.
Yeah, and you can, there are worlds where you made money in the past with games, but they were controlled by central systems. So the game could change the rules immediately.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of games start to, like, in some ways, experiment and say, well, what would happen if suddenly you actually earned money in the game? And so it's exciting.
Do you play that kind of games?
No.
But
I advise people that make those games.
do what I say, not what I do. Yeah. But some might argue, New York Times specifically, that this whole Web3 thing is an attempt by the wealthy to create this fake decentralization while they're building a centralized system around it to control it. So have more ownership of what we think is decentralized. Is that what's your position? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah.
The big masons controlling the world.
Yeah,
corporations.
I think that's a narrative that you can see the world as, right? And certainly if you look at the Pareto principle of 20% of the people own 80% of the land, 20% of the people own 80% of the wealth. That's a statistic that we have to reconcile with, that I think is, if you try to get under it, it's both sobering and doesn't make sense.
And it's also historically accurate, right?
Yeah.
There's always some rich guy that has a lot of land.
Yeah, it's just always, that's quite natural in the human order of things. So I can see that narrative happen for sure. I also see another narrative that is wealth creation, wealth generation, wealth opportunity. For instance, in the incubator that I run, there are over 21 countries represented. That's something that didn't happen at the beginning of Web 2. There's more opportunity when I go and stand in front of a creator in Colombia, where you could see someone say, oh, this is going to change things. If you're here in Moldova, the fact that you don't have to leave Moldova to actually work nowadays, and that there's
COVID.
And there's going to be this moment of cross collaboration across borders with governance, with the way we validate things. So I want to acknowledge those two narratives exist, and they're very sobering and real, but there are paradoxes that exist at the same time.
So basically, there's going to be big corporations or rich guys who are going to own a bunch of this stuff, but it doesn't mean you can't own some of it and make money off it. Yeah. Okay. Let's get more into the content creation part. So here in Eastern Europe, the public has been kind of living off of piracy since I can remember myself. We would just buy pirated stuff, like even the movies or books or whatever. We were buying a copy of the pirated stuff. And then later on, when everyone had access to internet and computers, we would just download the stuff on our computers.
Course.
So like, for example, Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Big show right now. I can't watch it.
Wow.
Because even if I have an Amazon account from back when I was living in it, I cannot watch it.
Interesting.
What do you think I do? I go online and I type watch or download Rings of Power.
Of course.
Free, blah, 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 blah. So in the case of artists from Moldova, where we have this piracy as a core value, basically, right? Like, why would I pay for something if I can easily find it for free? How do you think we should go about the transition to paying someone for their art or for owning their art, actually?
Yeah, it depends on what you value, right? I think the interesting thing, if you put it back in the eyes of the artist and someone who releases that work, for instance, they have no record of who watches it, who buys it, who resells it. And so what the Web3 is going to do, I think it's going to begin to actually put more power in the hands of the artist. Now, whether a Moldovan values that or not, I think it will determine up to what you want and what you want to pay for. But I think what's really powerful about artists is that because you're seeing a lot of artists can make money off secondary sales because you can track the record of each thing that is sold. So for the very first time in the art world or the media world, I could sell something to you, you could sell it to your wife, and then I'm going to get a cut when you sell it to your wife.
Oh. Is that Web3?
Yeah, that's Web3.
Okay.
So I get a percentage of the secondary sales. Now, this is something that's not for certain in the Web3, but it's definitely something that's been really happening all the time. So I'm hoping it continues as a trend. But I think that's a really powerful thing. If I sell, for instance, if I go to a Broadway show and I buy a ticket, I could then sell that ticket to you for Hamilton.
Oh, that's very popular.
I know. For $700. Hamilton will not get that money.
Yeah.
Right? They'll get the original sale. In the world of Web3, they will get percentage of that resale.
So for that Broadway show, the theater would have to only sell it online via the Web3, right?
Correct.
So you couldn't hand it over. Because we just, last week I think, we had a big game, a football soccer game between Manchester United and a team from Moldova. Yeah,
wow.
We had Ronaldo here. And obviously, all the tickets sold out immediately.
Of course.
And people were reselling it
for they were
10 times the price.
Of course.
Obviously. But one of the things that they made it harder to sell, my understanding, is they required ID of the original purchaser.
Yeah.
So that could have hurt someone.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did, because it's totally unfair when you want to buy, even like Formula One tickets, because I'm such a big fan. When I bought my ticket to the Grand Prix I saw this year, everyone was like, why did you buy it from the Formula One website if you can just buy it off of someone selling it at the gate right there?
Yeah.
I'm like, but why would I do that? Like, if you sell tickets to your Broadway show, why would I go buy it from someone else if you're the original creator? So I go there, and guess what? At the gate, the people were buying tickets because they were sold out.
Yep.
So they were trying to get anything.
Yeah.
So nothing was available for sale because they implemented these changes, and I think it's pretty cool. Like, it would be amazing to know that I have on my phone a NFT of that Formula One race.
You do.
Like, it would be really cool, right?
Yeah, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So now you'll see, it's already happening. Most tickets will be an NFT. You won't know it's an NFT. In fact,
unless I try to sell it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And then the cool thing is that you'll now have a digital collectible of that race that you went to. So you'll have a memory of it. Like, I don't know about you. I don't scrapbook my tickets or anything.
No,
do
that's history.
Yeah, that's history. But like, now you're seeing, particularly if you go to like Instagram, you can now display your digital collectibles, so you can show them. This is going to be, we're going to start, as we start to move towards this digital world, you're going to be able to present and share all the things. Like, your digital avatar will have that hat. I'll know you're a Formula One fan in the digital world, right? And we're starting.
I'll wear it proudly.
You will. And we're starting to see that move towards that. And it's also validation. It's ownership. Like I own this, and because now that that NFT, like if I sold you a physical ticket, I have no connection to you anymore.
Yeah.
But if I sell you an NFT, I could be like, hey, you're a Formula One fan, so
you can capitalize on it.
Of course, I can say I'm going to airdrop you like another NFT. That's a really cool opportunity. And so,
or a giveaway,
boom, boom, boom. So you're seeing a direct connection to a creator, collectible, fan, go like this. And now, yes, can I? Will that create problems? Absolutely, right? I'll try to just always sell to you, but you own that data. You could just get rid of that if you want.
You can just say no if someone's trying to sell.
Exactly, right?
Actually, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying right now. So basically what I'm hearing is we would need a communication campaign to make people understand that it's cool to own something.
Yeah.
You can own that Kings of Leon album on your laptop that's been pirated, but you don't really feel like attracted to it. You know, like, this is my stuff. You know you've pirated it.
Of course.
But if you know like I have some CDs that I purchased many years ago. I don't ever listen to, I don't remember ever listening to them.
Yeah.
But I know that I have some CDs, they are mine, and I will not give them to anyone. So now that you've explained to me, it makes a lot more sense, because usually when I see it on the internet, it's like, yeah, you own this code and this code points you to something. I'm like, why would I own this code? This code doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
And to a lot of people, it does really not mean anything.
Yeah.
But let's switch to the artist.
Cool.
So how can or how should an artist enter this world? What would be a starting point for them?
Yeah, so this is what I do. This is how I help onboard artists into Web3 and how they do that. So the idea of all the simple things that you do before stay the same, right? I always say, find your 1,000 true fans. How do you do that? You market, you make direct connections, you communicate, you create community. All those things are really important. Now, jumping into a Web3 is pretty simple, right? It's like saying, well, what do I want to make into an NFT? That's usually the vehicle you can use for those kind of things. But what I like about Web3, which is different from a Web2 model, is it's based in community. And it starts with community, right? So basically, before, a creator would make content for free.
Have friends.
Yes, have friends. And they would try to get followers. Then they would try to monetize those followers, right? And they probably wouldn't, based on the algorithm or based on the numbers, it's hard for them to do that, right? Now, in Web3, the model's shifted. The model goes, start creating content, monetize that content immediately, right? But in order to monetize this content, you need to,
you need that community.
Yeah.
You need people to like your work.
I imagine you have a community.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But, people that listen to your podcast, that want to be connected to you, that want to support you. Patreon was a great example of this. Patreon is a centralized system.
But they charge too much.
Exactly. Yes. They take a big percentage. That's part of their business model. Web3 is going to shift that. You don't need Patreon anymore. You can create an NFT that is what I'll call token gated, right? Same thing with the Patreon model, but you get the money, not Patreon. So that's interesting to me. And so in terms of onboarding creators, it really is the same process. It's just now it's more focused on building community because you invite them in the very beginning.
So basically, we're back to the basics, which is word of mouth, right?
Of course.
Because you want more people to talk about you and how cool it is. But I want to talk about how you NFT'd the Broadway show you had, right? Because you sold... I didn't really understand how it worked, but you initiated a Web3... Was it ticket sales or was the whole show like that?
Oh, yes. I think you're right. We were doing I'll call it Web 2.5. So I produced the first live simulcast of a Broadway show. So Broadway's never done that before. So you could tune in from anywhere in the world and watch a Broadway show while it was happening live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now we were interested and looking at blockchain and ticketing, and we certainly were exploring that, but that was largely, as you can see, as we talk about COVID, right? COVID disrupted everything to push towards digital. So one of the things that we were working on is live streaming entertainment content. What would people want to engage with, and particularly in the Broadway market. So it was exciting. I mean, I remember...
Especially since it's so hard to get to one of those,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's extremely exclusive.
Extremely
exclusive. If you want Hamilton tickets, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Go watch Disney and say
you know
thank
how much,
you.
Yeah, do you know how much that cost?
No.
$75 million Disney paid for that.
To show it?
Yeah.
Is it a year or in general?
In general.
Wow.
They paid. Now...
But, I mean, I don't know about the new cast, but the original one was wow.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah. And so, and that's the interesting thing about, so if you were in Hamilton, based on the blockchain, if that was recorded on the blockchain, every artist would get a 0.00001 cent every time that was streamed. So that's the opportunity you see here, where there's a record of engagement. Every time your podcast is listened to, you're going to get a percentage.
So
of that.
basically, you don't get a Scarlett Johansson type of scandal. Right?
I know. Well, that's another thing, right? So, and that again, it's people have business models; they have to do that. But that's what happens. People can suddenly the movie says we're going to distribute it digitally, and she goes,
you don't get any money from it.
Yeah, and that she entered into that contract thinking that it was going to be distributed where she would make more money.
Yep.
So it's interesting.
The reason I asked you about this Broadway show is because our theaters are also basically restricted. Mm-hmm. It's not that it's hard to get in. It's not a lot of people either have the time or go in. But if they were to be upgraded to this new system where you could watch it at home or you could watch it on your phone somewhere when you're traveling, I'm guessing a lot of more people would be open to it, because even like from an economic standpoint, when do you have time to go to the theater? When you have enough money to pay for your bills, your car, your mortgage, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, maybe I should go see this one play.
Yeah, or I'm going to take my wife out to a date. You know,
but if you pay half the price, say, and you can watch it at home like I did with Hamilton. Like I took a day off. I got all the stuff. I had a big TV. It made everything dark, and I enjoyed the crap out of it for 2 hours.
That's so cool.
And I told my wife, she's like, no, I don't like musicals. I'm like, but this is not like,
I know, it's not a musical.
It's not they sing, yes, but it has nothing to do with it.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a musical with my friends in that's coming out. Do you get Apple Plus here in Moldova?
Half and half.
Okay, I hope you get this one. It's called Spirited. It's with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, and it's a musical.
Nice.
Yeah,
Will Ferrell singing with his own voice.
Yeah, he's so good. That's
really cool.
He's so good.
It's just like, what's his face? The Rock with Moana.
Yeah.
That's my favorite movie.
I love that movie.
Okay, back to this part of the world. At the same time, how can an aging creator, say an old television company or even an old painter or musician, how can they get into it? Because, for them, even using a phone is complicated.
Of course. Yeah. I think what's going to happen, you're seeing now, there's I'll call it democratized access to tools. Right now, it's really hard to make things in Web3. It's clunky. It takes time. But all those big brands, all those big companies that I was talking about, they're making tools that make it at a click of a button. And so, I remember when, the internet came out, my mom could hardly email. And then soon she was buying things on Amazon. And then
you had to stop.
I was like, Mom, I don't need those socks. But it was like this thing of, I think, technology, as technology evolves, it will always start clunky. It will always start we don't know what we're doing, and then it will get easier and simple. And even now, think of you when during the pandemic, if things take 2 more clicks to do something, you just lose interest, right? No. And so I think we're going to see that with Web3. That, for instance, I know a product that's being developed where someone goes, this media that we're making right now, we can make that into NFT. We can monetize it. And then someone could buy it, and they could have a special talk with you.
That's really cool.
And have a phone call with you, right? These are things that...
Now imagine if 10 million people buy it.
I will. You're going to make a lot of money, sir.
You have to talk to 10 million people.
I know. And you can limit that, is scarcity.
Yeah. Now, because everyone wants to get to their favorite creator in some way, right?
Of course they do.
You want to buy an autograph, or you want to take a picture of them.
Yeah.
You want to, even if we see them on TV, that's already connecting.
Of course.
So I'm guessing eventually it will get to here, because because of our piracy issues, we don't really have that culture of understanding how close you can or should get to a creator. Even the most legendary, let's say, composer from Moldova, Eugen Dovă, you can see him on the street. It doesn't really, in New York, if you see
Ryan Reynolds,
you'd freak out, right?
Of course you would, yeah.
But here, like, that's the famous composer right there.
Yeah,
so
it's interesting.
There will have to be a shift in our perception, but I'm guessing it will happen with the new generation. So like my son is 3 years old. He's navigating YouTube like he was born with it.
Yeah.
A month ago, he didn't know how to use it. But now he's just like, I don't want this. And then he just starts scrolling.
Wild.
I'm like, stop. Soon you'll be buying stuff.
Yeah. Well, can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So do you know Roblox? Do you know this?
Yes, I heard about it.
So that's a metaverse. And you're already looking at brands. They called it, I didn't even heard this phrase. I was on a phone call with a brand, Generation Alpha. I guess that's your son's generation.
Oh, nice.
Gen Alpha.
Z ended, right?
Yeah. So they're Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
And my nephew is 5, so and he's almost trying to buy things on Roblox. And my sister's like, no. And they're anticipating that, think 20 years from now. I can't even imagine what things will be in 20 years. She's the person I was talking to, and what the future people are thinking is that my nephew won't have an ATM code or a card. Everything will be
something
crypto.
On his phone or watch,
boom, and he'll just buy things very quickly. So. And that's already happening. I mean, remember when I was a kid, and probably you, like, I don't know if this exists in Moldova, but I didn't do this, but my friend did. He got in a lot of trouble. So he would play a video game, and they would call this 1-900 number. This is in the U.S., where he had to pay like $3 a minute to get the clues to like solve the video game. Oh my God! And he got a $200 telephone bill. Remember when we had like telephone bills? And so he got a $200 telephone bill. He got in so much trouble, and we were talking about it the other day, like.
And that was a lot of money back then.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But that's only 20 years ago, like 20, 25 years ago. So like, imagine how quickly we've changed from that. Now, 20 years from now, imagine when your son is 23, what will his life be like? How will he engage? And how
I hope he will engage with people. That's like my only hope. I hope that he will have friends in real life, and he will like have a barbecue and drink a beer rather than like have these glasses on. And now you should feel the taste of beer in your mouth.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I hope not.
Yeah.
But we're going that way anyway, right? It seems that all these scary sci-fi movies that we've seen, starting from Blade Runner and ending with Judge Dredd, were somehow hitting there. Yeah. So I don't know if it's because of those movies, or did they just kind of prophetize it, right?
Yeah. I always think that artists are on the edge of what the future is. For instance, as a creator, I worked on a piece called Utopian Hotline for the past 3 years, where I was asking the question, how do you imagine a more perfect future? And so we set up a telephone hotline where people could call and leave messages. We interviewed NASA astronauts and NASA people, and there was a commonality that sci-fi is often a representation of the future, and whether that's an imagination of the future or a dystopia of the future. And so at the end of the day, it's you and me who are showing up every single day and either moving us toward that dystopia or moving us towards a utopia. And not to make things that like utopia, dystopia, but we all have a choice as creators whether we move towards that or move towards that. So it's interesting.
At the same time, change happens with or without our participation.
Absolutely.
You can be against it all you want, but you'll wake up one day with like, I'm just buying stuff off of Roblox for some reason.
Yeah, or COVID will happen, right? And that's nature.
You said about the sci-fi. I specifically remember to this day, I think it was the first James Bond movie. The guy talks on the phone in his car video.
Oh, right.
And that was in the 60s.
Yeah.
Everyone probably freaked out on this.
Of
Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
And you can't really do that in the car. You could possibly have it if the cars had that, I guess we're waiting for the Apple car. If the cars had that little camera there, but it's totally possible today.
Yeah.
You can be talking to someone, have a Zoom conference when you're driving. Like, I don't want to sit at this desk having a Zoom meeting when I can just be driving, and you can, like, it'll be totally cool, right?
Yeah.
So when do you think Web3 will happen to be mainstream? Like, if you were to jump into the future, when that would happen?
Yeah, I would say it's going to happen. I believe it's going to go mainstream towards with VR and AR. And so the technology is being built right now where those will get more efficient. They won't be clunky. And there's a latency problem right now with a lot of those technologies. So if I turn my head, the computer can't process that fast. Once they get that kind of dialed in, it's going to move towards, we're not going to see us in like these like video games. It's going to be more, I'm going to be on this podcast with you. I'm going to put on some glasses and we're going to have eye contact, but you're not going to be in the room with me. We're going to be in a virtual space.
And we can change the space if we want.
Exactly. And that's what I think is going to move things pretty quick. And so we're looking at probably, 5 to 8 years away from that.
Really?
Oh,
from
yeah.
Mainstream?
Well, it's going to Expensive first, right?
Mm-hmm. Just like the iPhone.
Yeah. Or think of TVs. Like TVs is a great example. Like flat screen TVs. Remember when those came out?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of dollars. You can pick up one now for $300.
A big 65-inch 4K TV.
Crazy.
You're like, you don't have 8K for this price yet?
Yeah. Yeah. And so like it always starts with, that's what the market does, right? It starts with an iPhone that's really expensive, and then it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Or a TV.
Not in case of the iPhone.
I know it does. I guess more. They just have us buy more of them. They're very smart, those things. But yeah, so I think I would say more about 8 years, more mainstream, and it will start with how we work. I don't think it's going to be how we invest in video games and stuff. We'll use that logic to move towards that.
Okay. Michael, thank you very much for coming. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I appreciate you.
I learned a lot. I hope the people that are listening to it learn a lot too. Hope they will pirate less.
Yes, and I hope they buy your NFT.
Oh, I have to make one.
Yes.
I'll wait for that platform you said that you like.
Ding, ding, ding.
Click. Yeah. And let's hope Ethereum's price goes down.
I know, right? Well, it's going down today, actually. So.
Thank you for coming, and hopefully in 5 to 8 years you'll be back and we can talk about where we went.
We'll have our glasses.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alex.
Vreau doar să menționez că acest podcast are loc cu ajutorul suportului Agenției Elvețiene pentru Dezvoltare și Cooperare. Revenim în episodul 4, tot vorbim despre Web3, de data asta prin perspectiva educației. Mersi mult!